Welcome to Armchair Expert, Experts on Expert. I'm Dan Shepard, and I'm joined by Monica Padman.
Hi.
Hi. We have our first, I think, statistician on today. You think?
Is it our first?
That's a big swing. Nate Silver is the point. He's a statistician and a best-selling author. Everyone would know Nate Silver around election time. All of his computations end up as headlines all the time. He had an incredible track record for a while. There were a couple deviations that we'll learn of. But his books include The Signal and The Noise. And he has a new book out that I happened to just read on my own. Couldn't stop talking about. We invited him in. He blessed us with his presence. It's called On the Edge, The Art of Risking Everything. And also you can go to his Substack at Silver Bulletin, which is where he's doing all of his work now.
And that's a fun play on words.
Silver Bulletin.
Silver Bulletin.
No problem for you. You hit that like a silver bullet. Please enjoy Nate Silver.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Wow, you were in, did you say Seoul?
Yeah.
How's that?
Seoul's great. They have like these cool like bars and restaurants and art galleries. Like it's very vibrant.
I really want to go. And they have great skincare.
Oh, I know. They have snail serums.
That's old.
That's old.
That's old. That's made its way to America. Now
okay.
they have like salmon sperm.
Ooh, salmon sperm. Sign
you
me
get
up.
it injected and then you look 14.
You could really end up pregnant with all this skincare
You're really
routine.
good. It's dangerous.
So, Nate, I want to start by saying happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, you're here on your birthday. This is a very Capricorn thing to do.
I mean, look, you kind of have a lot of shit packed together, right? You have the holidays already. It feels a little greedy to have your birthday.
Self-indulgent.
Yeah. I don't want to have a birthday so soon after the holidays, right?
Well, mine's the second. So I'd argue mine's just 11 days worse than yours.
Yeah.
Because it's right on the heels of all that.
That's probably bad.
And are you in general someone who has no desire to celebrate your birthday?
I come from like a mixed family where like my dad's side's very anti-celebration, my mom's side's very pro-celebration. So like I'm kind of balancing out the recessive traits. And,
You're right, smack in the middle. Well, as I was learning a little bit more about your background, I was like, we have a lot in common here because I'm from Milford.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Which is 25 miles as the crow flies from East Lansing.
Yeah.
And your dad taught at MSU or still does?
He retired a couple of years ago, but yeah, I taught at MSU, so like a university kid, and like it's a good place to grow up. I found that I have like an unconscious hiring bias toward Midwesterners. Like they're just grounded, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, again, you want them somewhere on the spectrum where they're not constantly bitching about someone who tried to get one over on them. You know, we do have a big chip on our shoulder about feeling less than.
No, I mean,
So you want just the right amount of less than so they work their ass off, but not the kind that bitches all day.
No, and you can like detect. I was like at the airport in like Dallas one time. Like that person sounds really familiar, and like they're from East Lansing. I didn't know who they are. They had like a certain manner of speaking, and like those like micro dialect things. I think we have a little bit of that.
So you kind of like discovered that you love math in a very appropriate time. So I only know the members of a single baseball team that ever existed, and it's the '84 Roar, the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
I mean, Alan Trammell, I know his name. I mean, again,
you can go
Gert Gibson.
Parrish.
Yeah. No, the whole gang.
Bergman, yeah.
And you were what? You were 6-ish when that happened?
I was 6 years old and like, I don't know. I like numbers. I used to naively think I don't think I ever thought I could become a baseball player. I was like never that delusional.
Right.
But like in 5th grade, we had to write these biographies of like what our future life would look like, right? I was, how old are you in 5th grade? Like 11. So I'm allowed to say this, right? So basically I had myself like becoming president at some point.
Oh, wow. Of
but
America.
After that, I retired the presidency to like become baseball commissioner because that was like the higher office to me.
Your work was to guide America to a better place.
Yeah.
And then you would indulge your real passion in your retirement.
The real passion, the important stuff.
Starter job, the presidency.
That trajectory kind of makes sense. I was also watching the Aaron Rodgers documentary recently. I don't know if you've caught that.
I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
But he too is talking about like he would play this weird board game and it was all about stats and you would roll these dice and it would give you
Stratomatic.
That's what it was called.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of you inadvertently just practicing math nonstop without even realizing you were doing it.
The combination of like math, I collected like baseball cards, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like there was like a baseball card bubble, right? You'd buy like Beckett baseball magazine, and they'd be like, your net worth is now $5,000 with like like an 8-year-old's like a lot of money, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the NFTs of the late 80s, I guess.
Yes,
right? But
yes.
like, yeah.
All collectibles, really, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, Beanie Babies. Monica has
God.
one that she believed at one point was worth.
Yeah, Liberty. It's here.
It's covered in shit,
somewhere.
though, so we think it's degraded.
We found it in my
It's-
parents' basement, and it is disgusting now. But I do think it was like $72,000 or something like that. I still think that.
So you're super into baseball. You're crushing numbers as a hobby. You're also gay. When do you know you're gay? Because I know the vibe in Michigan in the 80s. And I know that I was living every minute of every day on the playground trying to avoid being called.
Yeah.
That was the number one go-to way to emasculate.
Gay wide, there were various forms. No, look, I
Yes.
think I'm like exactly old enough. It's turned 47, right? Where like just like 3 years later would have been pretty different.
The experience of going through school, I guess I read you say something that I relate to for different reasons, but like there's some value to feeling like an outsider from the get.
If you look now at like gay men of my cohort, right? They're often like quite successful, right?
Yeah. Best boy syndrome, right?
Including, but because they have like a little bit of what it feels like to be an outsider. If you're otherwise privileged, but you got a couple of things, right? You're gay and you're half Jewish, right? And like you just got a little bit of the flavor of
Adversity.
adversity,
think
but
so?
also like the ability to like code switch, I guess is the term, right? Like
Yes. Assimilate, have a secret, have a perspective.
yeah, you're not necessarily volunteering your entire self at all times. It's also useful in like poker or things like that, right? And it's useful in journalism. You don't want to volunteer information. There's in poker, there's a cost to volunteering information. And so learning to be like a bit more guarded and feeling like there's no kind of template I can follow that's exactly going to meet my needs, right? I have to kind of like take a little bit from different buckets.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so dad's in academia. Also, your uncles are like, you got some famous geologist uncles, which is really
He's
fascinating.
got some crater. There's some crater on, I think the moon, right?
Okay.
It's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were super overachieving, my dad's side. Right, my mom's side, like I have a famous like arsonist on my mom's side who got like written up in the New York Times. He like invented new forms of arson and insurance fraud. I think I maybe take after them. Like I'm like not actually like an overachieving type. I kind of do it despite myself, really, and so I take after that side of the family. I think
You end up getting a degree in economics.
in econ, yeah.
Yeah. So you get this degree in econ, and then you end up working for a few years as a consultant.
I was a transfer pricing consultant.
Okay, what is transfer pricing
I was hoping
consultant?
you would ask that. It's the most boring thing in the world. No, it's basically like when you have a multinational company and different parts of the company make different things. Like you have like Apple cell phone and they make the semiconductors in Taiwan and the screen in Bangladesh. How you price that can be used to optimize your tax policy.
Okay.
So basically, it's how do you like optimize your tax policy without getting sued by the government?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really valuable work we were doing.
It wasn't nourishing your soul.
But I hadn't really thought about it, right? When you actually have the chance for the first time to like earn a paycheck, it's kind of exciting.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
And I glossed over, you were also, I want to say you were the Michigan State champ debater. You also wrote for the high school newspaper. Also in college, you wrote for the Chicago Maroon. You're writing the whole time, and you're also doing all this stat work for fun with sports still. You're still obsessed. And then you create and explain this to us what PCOTA is.
So PCOTA is, the anagram is very, it's like picture, I'm not going to bore your listeners for even 15 seconds, right?
You'd be shocked with their tolerance for boredom.
If you don't say it, I'm going to have to say it on the fact check. So you might as well say it now.
Picture empirical comparison, it's deliberately nerdy, an optimization test algorithm, I think.
But it's also a nod to a player, right?
Like this obscure player who was always like a thorn in the side of the Tigers.
And this thing has a weird name I read for the first time in my life today. It was like, it wasn't a reverse-nym, but it was like a backward-nym.
Backronym, yeah.
What? I never heard of backward-nym.
Me
Have
either.
you?
It's like Doge, right?
Doge.
Like Doge
yeah.
was the thing, and now it's like the Department of Government Efficiency or whatever. So they kind of come up with the acronym
Yeah.
and then figure out some letters later to make it match the acronym they like.
Oh, it's kind of like...
Oh, they're working backwards. I got it.
Yeah, back.
Oh, that makes sense.
Acronym.
That's also how we process the world. We make sense of it after it happened, and we think we understood it before it happened. And it only makes sense after the fact.
No, I have a friend who's like a neuroscientist, and he's like, yeah, our brain's just kind of just predicting and inferring, right? We never actually know what reality is. We're just kind of like, we're just making like an expedient internal map simulation of reality.
We're modeling, which you ultimately do, right? Yeah, we're just modeling the future. And then our data set is something that is heavily subjective because we make it make sense in reverse.
Of course.
We go, oh, this happened, it's because of X, Y, and Z, but we don't know. That's just what we kind of cling to. Okay, so you create this thing, and what is the goal of Pacoda?
It's to forecast how baseball players will do. The innovation is that most predictions will just say, okay, this player, Shohei Ohtani, will hit 302 with 42 home runs and 108 RBIs next year, right? Whereas this gave like a range of options, so it was probabilistic. And that's kind of one of my big things is like, we don't know the future.
Right.
Baseball players get injured or stop using steroids or whatever else.
They're hungover.
They're hungover.
Get divorced.
They're human beings. And so there's a range of, and there's luck. But no, the idea is to like have like a range of outcomes. And so you're dealing with the uncertainty in the outlook. But yeah, people use it for fantasy baseball. Major league teams used it.
Was there already fantasy baseball? Because you did this in 2000. Was there already fantasy baseball at that time?
Yeah. I mean, fantasy baseball dates back to the 80s, I think.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Is Pacoda Moneyball?
Well,
it's kind of in the Moneyball
Oh my God.
tradition.
That's so cool.
Well, I do want you to
love
tell me when
Moneyball.
what year did that happen?
Moneyball was it 02 or 03, somewhere in that range.
Okay. So Pacoda's a couple years before that.
Yeah.
About the same time, almost exactly. Yeah. So coincidentally, we're doing this thing, the company was called Baseball Prospectus, and then this kind of blows up in part because of Moneyball, and now the Red Sox, who are being very stat-friendly, win the World Series in 2004. Yeah, it becomes a whole thing.
Okay, now this is where you're really going to put everyone to sleep. I understand that you're making statistical models. That's what this thing is ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What does that mean? What variables, you must be selecting the variables you're going to use to determine this. And I bet there's a lot of decision making just there. Like, what are we going to include? What were you doing that was novel about it?
People have this bad habit of like pretending that like, oh, the model just flaws out of a coconut tree to like quote former presidential candidate Kamala Harris. And no, you have to make a lot of decisions. In sports, at least the data is high quality, right? We record everything that happens on a major league playing field. But you're making decisions at every turn. A lot of it is about like where you add more complexity and where you're pruning. Because, models break, right? So you want like a complex simplicity, basically.
And am I right in that the product you create is a formula? It's a long formula, and you just start plugging in up at bats and this and that, and at the end of it, it spits out.
It's a bunch of computer code. Yeah, that's what it ultimately is.
And it's just a math equation that you've picked the variables of, and you have some way of evaluating the quality of the variables.
It's more like algorithm is the term that would technically be used. And like for our political forecast, right? Like literally, you input the polls and press the go button, and it like takes 5 minutes and runs 50,000 simulation, then spits out a bunch of data, right? But that makes it seem like it has a mind of its own. It's hard because on the one hand, you don't want to like I said, you don't want to dictate what the data says, right? On the other hand, if you like already have the answer you want, that's not really objective science either. So it's kind of this iterative process between like, okay, I want to systematize, so I have to follow rules and not just be totally ad hoc, right?
Right.
If I feel like it's handling this player badly or this election badly for a politics model, and I change the rules, what's that mean for the other elections, right? What's that mean for the whole system overall? It's not like there's just one right answer. What are hedge funds and banks doing, or what are like the best sports bettors doing? They're usually using multiple models. You want a model that's robust. So basically, if one thing breaks, then it will still spit out like a reasonable answer. That's like where some of the art comes in as opposed to the science, I think.
Now, really quick, where the fuck does one learn to make these statistical models? Was this taught in econ, or is this something you did as a hobbyist?
It's as a hobbyist, right? You're trying to win your fantasy baseball league. You're trying to like solve a problem that you're determined to solve. You're trying to maybe win money.
Yeah.
Gambling, for example. And so like it's you need to be very hands-on and have skin in the game, because it doesn't like academics, to cliche a little bit, like tend not to have like good street smarts for like modeling strategy. Like a lot of the skill is like being able to like look at a data set and say something is wrong.
Sniff out the bullshit.
Both sniff out the bullshit as a critic, but also like, okay, the value that number put out, something's wrong there, and there must be either a bug in the input, we put the numbers in wrongly, or the code failed somehow.
Okay.
Are you coding yourself, or you have like
in
an engineer
2000
you work with? Yeah, back
No, I still do for the most part.
Wow, yourself.
All my own coding. Yeah, I'm a control freak in that way.
Yeah.
And I think people need to understand as well, when you create a model, it's not telling you this team will win. I'm guessing, because I don't know shit about modeling, but I'm guessing it's saying there's a 54% chance the team will win. There's a 61%. And in the world of betting, if you have an 11% margin, right? If you can predict that 61% accuracy, you're going to be the most successful gambler of all time.
You know, if you can get 56% of your point spread bets right, then you're like a world-class.
Yeah, so we're not looking to predict with 95% accuracy. We're like anything above 50% is basically a good use of your time.
And that comes from poker too, where like poker players can discern like a 52% probability from like 48%, right? Most people think 100, 0, and 50-50, right? And we have like there are a lot more gradations between 50-50 and 100, 0.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's introduce your passion for gambling. When does that start? Because among your many interests, you're also a degenerate gambler.
I don't know. I would.
I'm teasing. You're here.
So I had my boring consulting job in college where I could do it in like a third of the time that we were billing the client. You know? So I had free time on my hands. In addition to like starting the Spaceball stuff, my friend at work was like, we are starting a poker game. We're in my apartment every Tuesday or whatever, right? And like the game actually never happens, but I was practicing for it, like online, playing games for fake money. And like poker does not really work for fake money, right? It's a game where you actually want to have to put something at risk.
Yeah.
It's a game that involves bluffing and risk. So eventually I get like some dubious offer to like get money in some free online site. I remember going home to my parents for like Christmas. And like having a bunch of whiskey and like, oh, I'm just going to play online poker, and you keep playing higher. And lo and behold, though, it's supposed to be like the cliche where you lose all your money, but like I won, right?
Yeah.
I got lucky at first and then kind of parlayed that into eventually like quitting my consulting job for a couple of years to play poker.
To play online poker.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which some article I read said you had made $400,000 in a few years from online poker.
Wow.
Is that
I made
approaching
I
accurate?
made 500 and lost 150 back or something, right? So like
So
350.
Okay, that's still pretty good.
Yeah, in 2000. I don't know how much you were making at the
Oh, it was more than the KPMG
job you
was the
quit,
consulting
right?
Firm. Yeah.
to play online poker. And then additionally, this Pagoda thing is now starting to get very trusted as a way to predict the performance and careers of these players. And then along comes Baseball Prospectus, which acquires this thing you've created, Pagoda.
Yeah.
And then you go to work for them.
And they were kind of like a startup, right? And they would just hire smart nerds on the internet, right? And they're like, okay, this kind of seems cool. Why don't you actually code this up for us? And like made a proposal. And also the first system was for pitchers. And they're like, make one for hitters too. And then and for some reason they decided like, how old was I at the time? Like 24. Like you should also be the executive vice president of the company, right?
Right.
It's a shitty job with a lot of bureaucracy and all these nerds you're trying to like wrangle. I mean, they're great people, right? We've had some reunions.
Yeah.
But like they're not the most corporate refined culture. And so you're doing like a lot of problem solving that I'm utterly unqualified to do because like we're not making enough money and like this job doesn't pay very well to do like management.
What kind of money did you make selling this algorithm to them, the Pagoda?
They gave me equity in the company, which theoretically could have been worth something, probably wasn't worth that much in practice.
But you're young and hopeful and optimistic.
You're young and hopeful. I mean, one problem we always had is like this was the era of like when Moneyball was penetrating into major league teams. So like our stars would get like picked off by like the Red Sox or by the Cubs or by the Astros or whatever else.
So from 2003 to 2008, you're at Baseball Prospectus.
Correct.
And you're also writing. They do books, they have monthly things. And so you're actively writing. It's just interesting how all these little bits and pieces end up getting woven together and what your life becomes. So how in 2008 do you decide to start fucking around with politics and applying your models to politics?
I was spending most of my time on the baseball thing, but making most of my money on the poker thing.
Yeah.
In 2006, the U.S. Congress is in kind of this panic. The Republicans are still in control. And like, so they have this like congressional page scandal where like Mark Foley's congressman was like messaging like 13-year-old pages about, hey, you know, why don't you send me some pictures? So they're trying to like do something to win themselves over with moral majority voters, right? It's 2006, so they've kind of, the gay marriage thing is kind of played out. And so they go after online poker. The last day in Congress in 2006, they passed this bill. And I'm like, fuck these people, right?
Oh, so you're angry.
So I got more into politics because A, it kind of compromised my livelihood, and B, like I'm like, these fuckers need to be.
But you never know who you're pissing off,
it's
Monica.
True, you gotta be. You gotta be on your toes.
Start getting more into covering politics. Also, I'm living in Chicago at the time.
Oh, and Obama's coming
Obama's
through.
a big thing, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, and he was like this hipster fucking law professor. I'm like, oh, he's running for Congress. Oh God, who's this guy, right? But then he's kind of a cool guy and like,
Yeah, admits to doing coke. I like that.
yeah, he looks and sounds unlike any presidential candidate
Yeah.
before, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for him, right? So yeah, and so 2008 becomes this inflection point where I guess people thought like, oh, there's so much more political participation now, right? And then I'm not trying to get too involved in the politics, but then we obviously kind of spin into all types of crazy directions after that. I mean, life, there's a lot of luck, right? Like I felt I was
Coincidence, yeah.
lucky to be kind of like at this place where baseball stats really took off, and then lucky to be at a point where like, hey, kind of like people want Moneyball for X. That's a very good business thesis. So like, oh,
Yeah, they want to
Moneyball, but for
datify
politics.
everything in the world, basically, right?
So I have that skill set, and I have like in the right place at the right time. And then 2008 is this big inflection point where like politics becomes much more crazy and interesting. All of a sudden, like politics is like not this like crusty thing anymore. I'm not trying to be super partisan, but it felt like, okay, now you actually have like an interesting politician who I'd actually want to hang out with, right?
But at any rate, 2008, you create a model to predict the outcome of that election.
Yeah,
And you start 538.
that's right.
By the way, I've known 538 for, I guess, the last 15 years, or whatever, however long it's been going. The Electoral College has 538 members.
Oh, members. Oh,
Yeah,
I
did you
didn't-
know that
No,
right out of the gates?
I only think about 270 when I think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 538,
Electoral votes.
and you name it that.
I don't know if I'm good or terrible at naming things.
Lo and behold, your model predicts the outcome of the 2008 election and the 2012 election with an accuracy that's really not rivaled at that time, to the degree that time makes you one of the 100 most influential people.
Yeah, but there's deep irony here, which is like the whole point of the model, like you're talking about earlier, was to be probability driven, right? We're not calling
Yeah.
Ohio for Obama. We're saying there's a 52% chance because it's just barely ahead in the polls. And if you had to bet, you go 52 instead of 48.
So, but in 08, you got 49 of 50 states,
Yeah, and then 50
right?
in 2012 because it's just kind of like dumb luck, basically. right?
Are you being self-deprecating or are you being honest? Like I
No,
can't
because like, okay,
tell.
look, you want to have who's going to win Alabama in 2028?
No, listen, 44 of the states I could call without a model.
Yeah.
But those others,
man, they're kind of all
Yeah,
over
so
the
maybe
map.
one or two, your model's a little better, right? But then you just kind of win a couple of coin flips.
Well, despite how easy apparently it was, you
nailed it.
do ignite the people in a way that they do think they have their Moneyball guy for politics.
Yeah.
And so the New York Times brings you in-house for 3 years. And I want to know what that experience was like, because you go from, you have 5038 as its own website, and then that gets transferred to the New York Times. And I think the numbers when you came there were like 1 in 20 site visits were to go to 5038. But by the end, when you leave, like 17 out of, like a huge percentage of their personal traffic was you.
I just had like an anxiety dream about the New York Times the other night, right? I just flew back from like Korea. So you have this like really long periods of like REM sleep where like their little nested universe within your dreams and stuff like that. And I had some anxiety. They were like, before we let you write the Times, you have to prove your chops as a traditional reporter, right? And they had some like very complicated story with like some blind person that I don't know why.
Test that you were going to fail.
No, so on the one hand, it was great, right?
I mean, it's got to be terribly exciting for you. You just started this fucking thing, and 4 seconds ago you were at this stupid job cheating on taxes. Like, this has got to be exciting.
No cheating we're staying within the boundaries, Dax. Staying within the boundaries. There are brilliant people at the New York Times.
Yeah.
At the time I was there, it's 2010 to 2013, right?
Uh-huh.
At the time I was there, it's transitioning from being like this dinosaur like print media business to like what's now I think a very well-run, mostly digital media
Is it
business.
a scary point in its history?
Yeah, and a vulnerable point in history, 538 is quite successful there. This is when they actually are getting like a whole bunch of new subscribers for the digital product. But then you kind of run into egos mixed with kind of personnel turnover. There's like a new CEO. It's a cliche, right? When they bring in the new guy and the project was the old guy's project, and like the new guy is going to...
Yes.
Oh, this is when you have a
Fine
movie
way.
at a studio. Worst thing that can happen in the world is you've made a movie for a certain president of a studio, then a new president comes in, and that president decides your marketing budget.
Right.
But they are incentivized for the previous person to have been a failure.
This happens nonstop. This happened to me personally.
And in politics, exact same thing. When a new person comes in, the old stuff all has to go.
Yeah, or fail, ideally.
Yeah.
So new guy comes in. Meanwhile, like at the time, the New York Times newsroom, like the traditional political reporters, kind of hate our guts because that election in particular, 2012 was a very fucking boring election, right?
All right.
Yeah.
It was Romney and Obama, and I mean, maybe that's better. They're both relatively competent people, but like not a whole lot is changing or moving. They're well-known candidates. And so like a lot of what the newsletter or the blog was doing, 538, was saying, yeah, this movement in the polls, it's all kind of fake and nothing's really changing, right? Which is like kind of against what their reporters want you to say, where it's drama unfolding and game-changing, this and that. I don't know. Once you start testing the market, sometimes you get tempted, and eventually there were other offers that like let me try to build 538 into a larger thing. Whether that was successful or not, we can.
So Disney/ESPN comes along. 3 years is up at New York Times, and you leave and you go to Disney, ABC, ESPN, where you're for a long, long time, from what, 08 to 2023?
No, 10 years, from 13 through 20.
Okay, 13 to, and when you leave, there is an editor there who pretty much shits on you pretty publicly. Right? It says you were a bad fit, you were a disruptor.
At New York Times or at
the New York
Disney?
Times.
Oh, okay,
After you departed. Now that person then later said they regretted how they handled that. But was that a surprise to have them take that approach? Were your feelings hurt, or did you feel like you deserved it?
I think the Times is not used to people turning them down very much. And look, they are, and I actually still freelance for the Times occasionally, right? Good relationship now. It took like 10 years to repair, but like...
You wrote an op-ed right before this election that I read, which is like, my gut tells me Trump's going to win. Here's the statistics, but I'm telling you my gut.
And the point was that the gut wasn't very valuable, but now I'm going to pretend that my gut was prescient instead.
Yeah.
But no, so now I have a good relationship with them instead, but they weren't used to being like turned down, right? And the cliche was that if you turn down the Times, then your career is over, which isn't really true anymore. You've had like a lot of ex-Times people start Substacks or have other success elsewhere.
I bet people have heard explanations, but we could stand for a concise one now. Why did you shit the bed so bad in 2016, and why did everyone shit the bed so bad in 2016?
I think 2016 was actually our best election.
Okay,
because I think about this as a gambler. And to me, the question is, what are the odds that you have relative to the consensus odds, right?
Wait, elaborate on that.
So our model had Trump with a 30% chance of winning, and we spent a lot of time explain to people that Hillary does not have this election in the bag. It's a much closer race than Obama. All these states, math term, but correlated, right? Meaning that like Michigan and Wisconsin, they're all kind of the same state, right? So like if you lose one state, you'll probably lose the others. And so like all that has to happen is that Trump overperforms among so-called white, working class, white non-college voters. And all of a sudden then you can win the Electoral College, which is kind of what happened basically. So to us, if you were to like have invested in Amazon stock on day one, and you said, I think there's a 30% chance that Amazon will boom into something really big, and everyone else says, that's crazy, it's only 1%, right? Then even though you're below 50%, then relative to the consensus, we were one of the only people who were saying that Trump really did have a shot.
Yeah, you failed least bad. Is the way we might say.
I would push, because again, you're getting odds, right? If you were gambling on the election, which I have no problem with.
Right, you're pro-gambling.
You could get like 5-to-1 odds on Trump. Basically, 5-to-1, 6-to-1.
In 2016.
And our model said it's like 2.5-to-1 instead, right? So that means that the expected value, poker term, right?
Yeah.
If you're able to make that bet, that would be like the best sports bet in the world, right?
Because you personally have Trump at 3-to-1 and the odds have him at 5-to-1.
5-to-1 or 6-to-1, right?
So
and like,
for you, that's a great bet.
Yeah. You're going to lose most of the time, but you get 5x, 6x your money when you're right.
Got you.
That's not how 99.9% of the political audience thinks. But no, I mean, look, we did take care, though, to like emphasize the uncertainty to the point that we were getting like yelled at. People like, we just think Nate's trying to like just get more web traffic.
And I will say you're a victim of the data you're sourcing, so maybe also some of the data. So I guess there's this big mystery of why these polls were so.
The most concise explanation is that people who are more college educated, who read the news more, are more likely to respond to surveys, right?
Oh,
like,
interesting.
exciting. A pollster called on the phone.
Yeah, and my opinion is valuable. It should be recorded.
Of course.
Well, I always go the other way.
Me
It's like,
too.
who's dumb enough to want to chat with a stranger? Like, you got to be
Who
so
picks up
bored.
the phone anymore?
Well, people with high social trust answer all types of surveys more, right? But who has high social trust? It's like Democrats, right? They are the establishment system party now, which didn't used to be
That's
true
interesting, yeah.
as much, right?
Elaborate
Obama
on
was
that.
like the disruptive candidate. His electorate was younger. His electorate was, Black, Hispanic, right?
Yeah.
And like now the Democrats are becoming kind of the party of like well-educated, like college-educated, like white liberals, and like they're very trusting of the media. And so they both respond to polls more and vote Democratic more. And so if you don't adjust for that, you're going to have your poll oversample Democrats. That's a technical term I'm using slightly incorrectly on purpose, but like you're going to wind up with not enough Trump voters in your poll if Trump voters don't trust the media, and you're not accounting for that in some respect.
Right. Yeah, I guess some faction of the Trump base hates the media to a degree that if someone from the media called or a pollster called, they would say, fuck you and hang up.
Yeah, and it's not that they even like lie about who they're supporting. I mean, Trump voters are proud. They just said they aren't being reached in the first place, right? They're not picking up strangers' phone calls. If they are, they're not going to want to spend 15 minutes and take a survey, and that can shift. After the first assassination attempt against Trump, right? There's like a lot more enthusiasm. Like, I'm proud to be a Trump supporter. I want it, but like certainly in 2016, maybe the Trump supporters were not easy to reach.
Okay.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
So you do, I guess, 10 years there. And how was that experience? Because I got to say, I feel this parallel existence for us, right? So we create this little thing in the attic, and then all of a sudden Spotify comes along, and I would say that was your New York Times kind of, well, we could be a part of this really big thing, and there are lots of advantages. These are interesting experiences where you have this little thing that you know very well, and you potentially go somewhere to make it bigger, and that is kind of
A roll of the dice.
a roll of the dice.
There are a couple of big problems. One is that, again, we've learned this before, but they have me doing a bunch of management stuff that's like not my comparative advantage, to put it kindly, right? I mean, I'm okay, but like it's like exactly the part of my brain I don't want to be using. It's like I need time to like just get in the zone and get in a flow state and like write or
kinky
build
with those
models.
numbers.
I don't want to like, I don't want to have to respond to some email about this person wants an X% raise or but the main issue is, so I get in there and John Skipper, who is the head of ESPN at the time, he's like, Nate, don't worry about it. We're just going to just make great content. I'm giving him a thicker Southern accent. He's like,
Good. Yeah.
Just make great
We
content.
work in
and
archetypes,
You'll never have to
so-
worry about anything, right?
Lean into it.
And I'm like, that's actually like a bad thing, because what happens when like, I like John Skipper a lot, but he had some personal issues as oust. It's kind of the same thing again, right? Somebody new takes over and they don't have this mandate. And all of a sudden ESPN's like, well, what could be, we have the TV business. What could go, and theme parks, that's robust unless there's a global pandemic or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So like all their businesses like began to hit headwinds, and we were set up as like, literally as like kind of a loss leader, right? It's not even that big a line item on Disney's budget, but they're like, you know what? It's not really worth it. If we're losing $5 million instead of making $5 million, who cares, right? Who cares?
Sure.
But then when you're under financial pressure, like that is not going to hold up very well. So we're kind of in a point of stasis where like there's no business model. When you don't have a business model, then it's hard to do anything. Really, I'm not sure what you're optimizing for exactly. And then there's also the issue of like, if you're creative, then everyone like wants to have this like brand expansion, but like you're the major creative force.
You can only expand so much.
You can only expand so much. People want you ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And like there are ways around that. There are some things that do scale, like the models that we build, like they get a lot of traffic, and like I could hire somebody now, and we're kind of in the process of doing this all over again at the Substack Silver Bulletin now, right?
Right.
But much slower. I thought we have to hire as many people as possible right now. When you get to ESPN, I talked to Bill Simmons was at Grantland before that, and he's like, everything that you want, ask for it right now, right? Because you'll never have more leverage than you'll have right now.
They're in the wooing you phase.
Yeah. Ask for like business class travel, because it's like
Yeah.
a reasonable thing if you're busy, right? But like if you ask for that in the next contract negotiation when you're losing money, then But ask for that now. Lock that in right now.
Yeah, that's sage advice.
But then you kind of wind up like with 25 people all starting new at the same time. And we didn't understand that like you need to have like a product team and like an advertising team. And like it was just kind of like an awkward fit in some ways. Disney is a wonderful and creative place in certain ways, but it does things at very large scale, right? Everything is like 8 or 9 figure budgets for like an NFL deal or like a movie or a theme park or whatever else, right? I mean, the whole city of Orlando is basically the 51st state is like Walt Disney World, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an enormous corporation.
And Disney's very big picture, right? And like it offended, they were like, he's a creative. He doesn't have to deal with money. It's like, no, actually, I like making money. I like business, right? I like for this to be like a growing business because like anytime you try to hire somebody, we hired good people. But like, what's the long-term plan? We're like, well, we don't know.
You like this?
But it's under contract for 3 more years, so why would you worry about it? And all of journalism sucks, so like you're not going to have job security anywhere, and that becomes like a very hard pitch. And so like it is also partly my own ego where you're like, oh, I want to have like, well, I don't know why. I felt like I was like, want to be like one of those 1970s magazine editors, right? You're like drinking wine as you're finishing the
a cosmopolitan man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have some Argyle socks. I'm not sure what's happening exactly.
Okay. So you're there for a while, but you also, in 2012, you write The Signal and the Noise, and that's a really successful book. My apologies, I haven't read that one. And the fact that I read On the Edge is really kind of a fluke. I always go to Audible and I know exactly what I'm going there to get. And I just happened to stumble upon your book.
That's cool.
Yes. And I'm vaguely aware of you. I know that you're a statistics genius, right? That's my understanding of you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to give this book a shot. And I can't imagine this has gotten back to you, but I've brought it up now a bazillion times on the show because there's so many little pieces of On the Edge that I really, really enjoy. Very thought-provoking. I think your outsiderness in some degree of disagreeability, I appreciate greatly.
Okay, yeah.
And the book's kind of it's sprinkled throughout. So I like the spirit of it, right?
Thank you.
In a nutshell, the examination of this book is a group of people you refer to as the River, which of course is a Texas Hold'em term. It's the last card that comes out?
The last card.
The last card.
Because supposedly in the old riverboat days in poker's origin, if the dealer was crooked and cheated or was suspected of cheating and the last card affected the hand, he'd be thrown into the Mississippi River.
Oh, I like that.
Possible origin of that term.
Yeah. If not, let's keep it because it's so fun.
I like that.
The turn.
Oh, that's the second to last one?
Flop, turn, river.
Got it.
Flop,
Okay.
turn, river.
Got it.
And so for people who don't play Texas Hold'em, the stakes go up and up and up, right? Because you're given 2 cards, you've already perhaps put in the ante, and generally you want to see the flop for free. You're going to get 3 whole cards. Now you're going to have 5. You have some sense of what your hand is. And then it just diminishes it from there, right? Where at the end, you're hoping for a single card to change your destiny. So obviously the risk level's going up and the stakes are going up. Is that
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a game
paint
of escalation, right? Let's
Game
say
of
you're playing
escalation.
a $5, $10 Hold'em game, which is a medium-sized game, right? And you have like $5,000 on the table, right? So the first bet, typically in that game, someone would bet $30 to try and win the $5 and the $10, right? So like it's relatively small money. In fighting for those $15 worth of blinds, things can escalate until all $5,000 are on the table, right? Or even more than that potentially. And so like it's a game of escalation.
But escalation and reduced options, right? I guess that's implicit in a game of escalation, but you're getting less and less options.
Yeah, as you get to the river, then there are fewer cards that can come, and like it's called the game tree. You can imagine like a branch where it like prunes out and then narrows again toward the end. But the more money on the table, the deeper you can get because you can raise and re-raise and check raise and all these things, right? It's a very complex game. Actually, it took longer to solve poker than to solve chess. It is kind of solved now. I mean, we can get into what that means exactly.
Tell me. Yeah, because a computer, AI can play chess better than a human. I can play Go better than a human.
And it can kind of play poker better than a human, although not. There are a lot of caveats there, right? One is that humans are not playing poker perfectly. The whole thing you learn about poker strategy, if you actually like study how computers play poker, but computers must be very honest. Like, no, computers fucking bluff all the time. Like one discovery they made is that like you have to bluff a ton in poker. That's what makes people have an incentive to pay you off when you have a real hand.
And I've played a bunch of Texas Hold'em, but even reading your first few chapters, which are about gambling in general, there were a few things in there I was like, oh, wow, it's down to a science. I forget the ratio you give, but there's a known percentage you should bluff to make yourself reputable and get paid when you have it.
It depends on the size of the pot and it depends on the cards that come in other things, right? But you have to bluff a lot. And also concealing information, although it's intuitive if you think it's poker, it's a game of limited information, right?
Yeah.
But you want to be very deceptive, right? You want to sometimes you want to slow play with a strong hand that's very important or check a strong hand, right? Just to avoid giving away too much information.
Well, ideally, you know your opponent, how they play, and you're now counterpunching, right?
But that's the thing, right? If you know that a certain player bluffs just a little bit too much, then all of a sudden, a huge number of your hands are calling that would be folding before, or vice versa. Or things like, this player tends to make a big bet when they have a bad hand as a bluff and a small bet when they have a good hand. You love that type of player, right? It's like, okay, so now when you have a good hand, I can get away cheaply, maybe even fold or at least pay you only a small amount. But when you're making a big bluff, then you're not balancing your strategy the right way.
It's extremely psychological, I feel like.
Yeah.
Maybe 100%.
For sure. No, I mean, it's maybe 70-30 math versus psychology. And it's also like a type of discipline, right? Because you can in the abstract, there are computer programs you can study with and coaching videos. I have not a personal trainer, a poker coach who's kind of like the poker equivalent of like a trainer basically, but but can you execute when all of a sudden you're playing for $50,000 or things like that, right?
We're at the final table of some tournament.
Yeah, and I played in the World Series of Poker a lot, right? But I made day 6 of the main event. By the time you make it to day 6, every pot is literally worth a couple $100,000 in. You don't get to cash that in right away. My parents would have been oh, I have $1 million chips, and you want $1 million bucks. No, I have chips, and the exchange rate's 10-1. No, nothing is. Yeah,
nothing's 1-to-1.
And the World Series, the main event, there are 10,000 players now. So there are not 10,000 good poker players in the United States, right? And so they're amateurs and they're so nervous, they're shaking, and so it becomes learning how to deal with a flow state and a little bit of stage fright and executing in those high pressure situations. And when you do it enough, and I'm a very talented amateur, but not a professional.
He's won $840,000 in tournament play.
Then how can you be an amateur?
That's net, though. That's gross, not net.
That's gross, I know. Yeah.
We're always talking about gross.
Let's focus on the winnings right now so I can prove to her you're good.
Kind of develop a little bit of a sicko tendency where you're I feel more alive when I'm playing for real money and more focused and and in a weird fucked up way, even a little bit more relaxed. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, there's all these different social science studies where it's they measure testosterone levels of day traders. They measure testosterone levels of poker players. There's a biological component too that's happening.
There absolutely is. And this is one thing it took me a while to learn. And I learned it by talking to this one guy who consulted with traders, actually was a neuroscientist and studied these Wall Street traders. These people are fucking crazy, right? They think they're so rational, but they're not, right?
Yeah.
Talked to a guy who talked to an astronaut, talked to a guy who's trained fighter pilots, talked to a guy who trained professional golfers, right? And they kind of all say the same thing, which is that no, absolutely, your body is working on a different chemical system, a different operating system when you're under stress, right?
Yes.
And actually, a good athlete will have a higher escalation in his or her heart rate under stress, right? A trader will have higher spikes in testosterone and other neurological things, dopamine and things like that, right? And that's okay because it means that your body is reacting to stress. And when you learn in poker that okay, I'm not going to feel the same playing a $10,000 pot as in a $5 pot in my beer league game on Tuesday night or whatever, right? And learning okay, I can start to master that or at least fuck up less than other people.
Yeah.
When you learn that, then that becomes kind of powerful.
Okay, so the book isolates this group that you refer to as the river, and these are people who have a great appetite for risk. They have a pretty good evaluation of risk. They have a certain rejection of the commonly held wisdom. There's some traits, and then you go on to profile these a select group of people.
Yeah.
And among them, and there's more, but we do Doyle Brunson, a very famous poker player. And then we do Peter Thiel, the venture capitalist. You do Sam Bankman-Fried, which is very interesting from, of course, FTX. And then you do Sam Altman.
So these are people that all would fall into this group referred to as the river. They live in the risk analysis world. And I think maybe, could we start with Peter Thiel?
In some ways, Peter Thiel is the most curious one of the bunch because like most of these guys, and there are lots of women in the book too, but it's, it's more heavily more men than women.
Testosterone is playing a big role in a lot of this, I think.
Testosterone and ego, and again, I'm not trying to be too woke, but and entitlement, and like who is afforded the privilege of like of gambling in a probabilistic way, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so he is someone who's like known as being quite risk averse. Like he wanted to like sell PayPal early on and protect his downside. He's also quite religious.
He's a unique individual.
Yeah.
He's gay, deeply religious.
What's his religion? Do we know?
He was German. I don't know if he's Episcopalian or something.
Of some sort.
Christian of some sort.
He's a right-wingish gay man.
Yeah.
That's always interesting to me.
He is kind of like a very literate, like intellectual in a way that like Elon Musk is brilliant in many ways, right? But he kind of has like a 12-year-old's mindset, right? It's like Thiel, like he's quoting from like scripture and things like that, and like philosophy,
the classics, and he's a brilliant.
Yeah, and his view was like, okay, well, Nate, 10 years ago, all this Moneyball shit was the frontier, but now it's all been internalized, and now like the contrarian thing is actually to trust your gut more because all the nerds have taken over everything, and so there's no alpha, would be the trading term, from just running the models that everyone else has, right?
Right, that's no longer an advantage. The Moneyball thing's been played to its logical
I think
ends.
is probably fairly close to being true. But he was an early adopter of Trump in 2016. I mean, he kind of will say that, I thought it was like a good contrarian bet that maybe the odds are 50%, not Nate's 30%, and definitely not the conventional wisdom's 10% or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Look, I think Trump like probably matches a lot of his political leanings anyway.
Yeah.
But you have to give him some credit for like understanding that like Silicon Valley's interests and the progressive interest would clash in lots of different ways, right? That like Silicon Valley would come under scrutiny for lots of good and bad reasons, right? What are the effects of like cell phones and social media? What are the effects of like very powerful people owning individual media brands and things like that, right?
Yeah. Or all the satellites.
The tremendous accumulation of wealth. At the same time, like, Silicon Valley has a cliched image of itself where it's like, we are the ones who think differently and we are contrarian.
Or disruptors.
We're disruptors, right? In some ways, it's still quite impressive. Despite all the things that America fucks up, right? We still have the best talent from all around the world coming to California in particular, right?
Yeah.
Coming to Silicon Valley, even though it's kind of like a place that's very expensive and like lots of unlivable in certain ways, but we still have that. And our economy is still growing. Our lifespans are not. We're making this trade-off, which might be bad, right?
Yeah.
Silicon Valley understands that like growth is vital and technology is 8 times out of 10 is good.
Yeah.
And they understand probability. They understand that if you are making a lot of high upside, high risk bets, that like if you make enough of those, actually they pay off pretty well, right? If you have like a 1 in 10 chance of having 100 extra investment, it's like a really good bet in the long run. Those basic things, right, overcomes a lot of all types of problems, right? Being very pilled on some issues and like it's very male and very white and Asian. It's always had a lot of ego, and I think Trump winning further inflates those egos, right?
I just think it's really wild that in our lifetime there was this movie called Revenge of the Nerds, which was completely unthinkable. And the notion was, these jocks have made it insufferable to live here. But now the nerds are the jocks, and now we're seeing their version of it. And guess what? No one's version is all that great. People with power and privilege act the way they do. That's kind of...
and people have an amazing ability to like feel like they're disempowered or aggrieved when like objectively speaking, like, Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and Elon are doing really fucking well, right?
Yeah.
They're as wealthy as any people have ever been in the history of the universe or the world, at least, and like
shape the world they live in pretty dramatically.
And the book, I think, gives them a perfectly fair shake. I just kind of wish that like they're kind of sore winners, right? They also, so first of all, the average Silicon Valley CEO is still probably a progressive Democrat, right? But like there was a much more sizable Trump faction. The book kind of like anticipated that. People make the mistake of assuming that things just kind of trend linearly upward forever, right? And the world's a story more or less of mean reversion, right?
Yes.
There is a broad based conservative backlash on cultural issues.
Yes.
It might be peaking right about now, right? It might peak like 90
How do
days
you,
after
in your
Trump
projections, how do you, this is my own personal digestion of what just went down. To me, it feels very obvious this was an election on wokeism. I mean, just watch the right's ads, and they were about almost a single issue. How do you feed that into an algorithm?
You don't. You're looking at the polls and like, we're, for better or worse, we're just looking at the polls and economic data and not trying to answer the why questions as much. We kind of leave that up to the pundits, I suppose. But look, I mean, the them ad is partly about wokeness, but also about other things, right? It's about like taxpayer money. It's about kind of Kamala Harris seeming kind of like out of touch in different ways. It's about like
and wishy-washy.
illegal, undocumented immigration. It's about flip-flopping. So it kind of like, it might be the most played ad in TV history because it's about more than one thing. I don't think that like Republicans tried to run on transgender rights in 2022 at the midterm, didn't have that much success with it. Exactly. So I think it's more about like, once you kind of like get pilled, like for me, and again, I voted for Harris, full disclosure. I didn't think it was that close, right?
I did too.
Yeah. People need to be able to have like a healthy degree of skepticism without going off the deep end. And that seems to be very hard for people. Partisanship is a drug. It's a cliche, but like
both sides, it's like, this is cancer. I'm watching like the people on the right celebrate that LA's burning down. And I want to just say, like, if it brings you great joy that your countrymen are losing everything and their children don't have a bedroom anymore, if that gives you pleasure, you must admit your politics is a cancer on both sides. When people on the left are stoked people are dying of COVID, that's a cancer. Your politics are a cancer at that point.
As we're taping, this is still like an ongoing
it's happening.
We're in the middle of it.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like not even like recriminations.
Exactly.
It's like, and how that started just instantly, it's like, I don't know,
It immediately is political.
it's like, you just won this election. You're going to gain a lot of power and you get like a nice little revenge against the left, but like, just chill out. Be like,
chill out for a week, if anything.
Yeah, just take a breather.
God.
Yeah.
But that's part of the problem because it's those people, if they were quiet, maybe the other people wouldn't be like, oh, I'm happy their houses are burning down. But Trump is literally calling him Gavin Newsom right now.
Yeah.
And he's
like
tweeting this. It's like, are you kidding me? You're our president.
it's like the shill to like chill ratio. I had some concept I'm workshopping, right? But like,
Chill.
in the short run, like shill kind of works. People are called to action and alarmed, right? And I kind of go back to like September 11th and like the patriotism phase and like and things like that, right? And that works in the short run, right? But a lot of people get tired of it, right? And like, there are good critiques you can make of like everything from like controlled burning practices in California to the expense of various public services to like the fact that if there is climate change, then needing to be more realistic and prepared for the type of housing that you're building in vulnerable areas, right? But like, but instead it's like turns it as some like thinking about DEI and the lesbian.
Oh yeah,
I kind of want the lesbian fire chiefs to have like reality TV show if they get fired. Like that would be because they seem really like these charismatic personalities, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like instantly like just like let people process this thing that their houses might burn down. And it's like it's a
bummer. It's a bummer.
Yeah.
But I guess where I differ from some of my peers is like it's on both sides. It's like a cancer that all of us have. It's just a fucking gnarly metastasized cancer that all of us have.
Yeah, I mean, there was one Democrat who was like, there was that picture now of like the McDonald's burning in 100-degree storm fire, right? And like. And she's like, this proves what corporate politics are doing to the climate. It's like, you can maybe wait for.
I know to fucking be so opportunistic. It's kind of a gross level of opportunism. Okay, Peter Thiel, all to say, he did do these kind of really revolutionary things at the time with his Founders Fund is his company.
Yeah.
And we even heard this when we listened to the Meta AI thing. It's like this decision to bet on founders and not try to wrestle control away from founders and have this belief in them in a way that was pretty new and novel at the time that they took this approach.
It's almost like they don't need to know what the idea is. They just want to believe in the founders.
I love that the more shabbily you show up for your first meeting, the more trustworthy you are. It's so funny.
Well, Sam Bankman-Fried, right, kind of played into this cliche of like deliberately. I mean, look, he's kind of like a self-described on the spectrum and like not like inherently a guy who's going to like wear a suit and tie, but he's like, if I am playing video games in investor pitch meetings, that will make me seem cool. That I have so much RAM, right, that I can't even, I need to like offload some of that playing a video game while I'm multitasking and like, and so he kind of played in that stereotype and like was quite deliberate because what they are is like, they're very intense, like pattern matchers, right? Like, okay, Zuckerberg, he was kind of seen as like kind of like nerd in a hoodie and not the world's best communicator and just wanted to grind all day in engineering problems, right? And like that became the prototype that was used. Or Steve Jobs, a slightly different prototype, for example. You know, and this can make it harder for like new prototypes to break through. Again, I'm not trying to be super PC here, but the fact that like there's so little money going to women founders and so little money going to Black founders and Hispanic founders is kind of insane if you're like the industry that wants to be disruptive and wants high variance, grit, and all these things, right? Because they're such intense pattern matchers. And because like they kind of can't lose. I mean, not like the average venture capital firm, mediocre firm isn't doing that well, right? But like the top firms kind of can't lose. If you have like the best talent from all around the world, it's like if every year the best team in the NBA got the #1 draft pick.
Right. All the very best players came and begged to be on a team.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Okay, so let's talk about Sam Bankman-Fried because you spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
And why do you think he was willing to sit with you? Why did he want you? And I mean,
Also,
I
just
know
in
the
case
answer,
people don't know, can you get?
Oh yeah, let's do a little quick
should.
history of like who he is, how he created FTX, and even what FTX was. Because I do think the layman doesn't really understand what they hear it all the time, but they're not sure what happened.
So Sam Bankman-Fried was a nerdy, mathy kid. His parents were professors at Stanford. I think his mother was a philosophy professor. His dad was a law professor. Got, like a lot of smart kids, got initially into finance at a firm called Jane Street Capital, which is a big quantitative hedge fund.
Okay.
At some point, he also got into something called effective altruism, which is the idea, basically it's Moneyball, but for charity. Was kind of the pitch, right?
Earmark that because my very favorite part of the entire book was the effective altruism part.
Okay,
so I want to
cool,
talk a lot about that, but let's just earmark that he got into that. So what's he do? He's at some kind of financial place.
Working for a hedge fund, and he's like, this is in his internal monologue that is probably unreliable to some degree. But he's like, so I want to like make a lot of money so I can like donate it to poor children in Africa, right? I mean, this is kind of like the cliched version of it.
Yeah.
To help prevent malaria at a very cost-effective rate, right? And then do a bunch other weirder shit too, involving AI and animal welfare and things like that, right? But like, he's like, I'm not making enough money at this hedge fund, and so I'm going to like start my own firm. And, his co-founder quits, right? Because he seems kind of crazy. And Sam is very, very like one thing you learn about the book is like all these people who think of themselves as hyper-rational and are thought of by others as hyper-rational, a lot of them are just kind of like degenerate gamblers at heart. Often skilled and smart degenerate
incredibly
gamblers.
impulsive, right?
Impulsive and kind of stimulus driven, right? And
he's also on Adderall, right? I mean,
he said that wasn't that big a part of the story.
If you live on meth, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much you can discount that.
I mean, if you play enough poker where you actually kind of have enough of a sample size where you see how things that affect yourself, like if you're hungry, I used to be like, I want to be tough. I'll do a little bit of intermittent fasting and I won't play. And then you're like playing poker for like 12 years. I just want to fucking like bust out so I can go get a fucking steak or something.
You don't even
right?
know you're trying to get out.
You're making all these marginal high stress decisions and the cumulative effect of anything that you're doing, right? You can understand maybe Adderall or nicotine, whatever. You can understand why people might like that, right? But it's going to affect performance and mentality, right? Long story short, starts a fund called Alameda. It kind of has some fallout there, but begins to make more and more money. Eventually realizes that like, hey, look, if you really want to get rich quick, then there's certain crypto trades that look like a very good bet, right? Mm-hmm. Leveraging different prices of Bitcoin in Japan versus South Korea versus other things.
But does the price of Bitcoin vary throughout the globe?
At the time, there were pretty big arbitrages because I believe this is right. In South Korea, you had to be like a registered agent to trade Bitcoin or like a resident of South Korea. And they were pretty strict about it, at least at first. And this is back when Bitcoin was a somewhat more obscure thing. And so, yeah, if you could somehow find a way to like buy Bitcoin in South Korea, but makes this money and then founds FTX, which is a crypto exchange, right?
Which I don't even understand how a crypto exchange works. My understanding is like you go buy crypto, you have a password and it exists. I don't know why is someone else ever involved?
So first of all, I have to like find somebody
Who wants
sell
to
me
sell
crypto,
their Bitcoin?
which is not a completely trivial problem, right? And like you have to like enter this 26-digit code and you can see what crypto is like a bit intimidating. Whereas if you go to like an FTX or there's Coinbase or a Gemini, then it's just like E-Trade, right?
Yeah.
Right. I got this much amount of money and I want to convert it to Bitcoin.
You deposit $20,000 from your bank account, you press a button, you buy Bitcoin, they take more of a surcharge than they probably should, but like, okay, now I own Bitcoin, which technically you actually don't, right? They are just allocating that to your bank account and they own the Bitcoin, but like, usually that was respected, Coinbase or I can't speak for all these firms, right? But like, in principle, your crypto is supposed to be segregated so you can't then go have a run on the bank, right? At FTX, it wasn't because Sam thought, oh, I'm very good at making trades and I want to make the world better through effective altruism. So like, we have $8 billion in customer deposits in crypto. Wouldn't it be a shame if I just left that sitting there in some account instead of like making these awesome trades with it? And of course,
he thought it was unutilized money.
yeah, he's like, well, I am trying to give my money away to charity and or to become like infinitely powerful. He thought he could become like president with some probability, literally, right? And he wanted to be like the world's first trillionaire. So he's like, yeah.
These are all so counter. Like, I want to be
Yeah.
so altruistic and I want to be the president and a
Yeah, look at
trillionaire.
Trillionaire.
A little
also,
suspicious,
This
right?
is wild.
also just like, what a goal. It sounds like an 8-year-old. Like,
I know. It's what you wrote down. I want to be president when you were 11 years old.
Right,
Like,
but
that's
I
what
grew
it-
out of that.
Yeah.
He even thought he could become president before he was age 35 by
Oh
like
my
lobbying to get the
God.
rules changed and like
okay. Who was the big backer of FTX?
Alfred Lin was a partner there. But Sequoia's a very well-respected firm.
One of the greats. And,
Yeah.
and their position in the book is just like, yeah, it's one of the ones that didn't work out. Like they're not even smart in the way you would think someone would smart. They said they would do it again, right?
All that can happen is it goes to zero, right?
Right.
So you go from 1 to 0, who cares, right? You go from 1 to infinity, then that outweighs a lot of 1 to zeros, basically.
Right.
So they were at least honest by saying we do this again, right?
Yeah.
Now there is some, I believe, shareholder action. So this is the rare case where there could be additional liability, but like probably not too bad. But the other part of it is like if you become successful in any different field, like a relatively young age, you can notice how people like change around you. And I'm sure it's true in Hollywood, but it's also true in the nerdier occupations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So we've interviewed McCaskill.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and we adore him.
Yeah.
And I had some quiet pushback that I didn't know quite how to articulate. And I thought your book did a really good job of pointing out some gaps in it. So maybe lay out effective altruism.
So effective altruism originally kind of meant what it sounded like, which is how can we find more effective ways to give money to charity, right?
Just look at what Bill Gates has been doing for the last 15 years. Like, how do we get the most bang for our
You
buck?
can
How
like
do we save
save
the
a
most
life
lives?
for $5,000 instead of the $10 million we put on the average. Governmental agencies actually put a value on human life, right?
In the
Based on how
US.
people behave in the US, which is 10 million, right? So that mindset, though, it becomes quite fraught, even though I think it's right? But you understand that you're putting a value now on different things. So that already is like a little bit fraught, right? What is the value of donating to the symphony, for example? Like a little bit harder to quantify. Okay, or we can start to ask some other couple questions. Well, okay, effective altruists mostly believe in animal welfare, which I see as a good thing, but how much are we trading the welfare of like different animals against each other, right? There was, for example, one example given in the book is that there was a puppy, a poodle, who got stuck in the New York City subway system a few years ago and like, okay, should we stop the entire F train
Dakota the dog.
to rescue Dakota? And they decided to stop the F train, but like you wouldn't do that for a squirrel, right? You'd run over the fucking squirrel, or like a cat probably gets run over. And a dog, we just like assign enough like moral value, then it gets weird. They're like, okay, well, look at the number of like neurons that like an animal has.
Well,
right?
really quick, let's just walk down one through. So Dakota, that really happened. Dakota the dog wandered into the subway. They shut it down. It was down for a couple hours. And you simply say, well, let's just really quick, let's do a generic loss of wages. Well, generic loss of wages of that one little situation was 2 million.
Yeah.
So how many humans can you save for 2 million instead of the dog? Then what about all the hospital workers that were waiting for their train?
Yeah.
Did they not get there? Did humans die because they weren't on their shift?
And in COVID, we discovered like all these solutions in COVID were terrible, right? it was terrible to have all these people get sick. It was terrible to shut down schools, right? And like, but you have to make trade-offs.
And you delineate the difference between small world problems and big world problems, right?
Right.
Like these statistical analysis are really quite good at small world problems, but as you get into big world problems, these are almost impossible to really.
And people like don't respect the boundaries enough, right? Like, I'll worry if I'm making a model in baseball or politics or basketball, right? Oh, this player is 10% underestimated, but the data is very good and we know how the system works. We know the rules of the game literally, right? So like, you have little errors and mistakes, but like pretty accurate, right? Whereas like in these big open-ended problems, you're just kind of making shit up on the back of an envelope. And sometimes it's the best you can do, right? We had to make these decisions again under COVID. And maybe if we'd been more thoughtful about them, like what is the cost of like shutting down school in Los Angeles for 19 months, right?
Yeah.
Like, we probably should have done more back of the envelope math there, which I think would have said that like, probably a bad idea, even given these uncertain assumptions, right? But people don't know when they go from like these closed problems that are amenable to modeling to these open problems where like it's just regurgitated assumptions over and over and over again. So what's happened though with EA, the mandate kind of expanded for various reasons from charitable giving to any problem involving utility, meaning how do we make the world better? More questions. Who's deciding what constitutes better and for whom, right?
Yeah.
What if I make myself infinitely happy and the rest of you are my slaves or whatever, right? Like you could say, well, Nate has infinite units of utility and, you guys have 0.01 because you're not physically dead. Maybe you get to watch like TV once a week or something, right?
It's a nap.
You're so generous.
Yeah, you get to eat at Arby's now and then, right?
One of the things I really loved about what you pointed out, I made the people I was on vacation with in Mexico City over Christmas suffer through my regurgitation of you, is utilitarianism, which we learn in philosophy, right? It's, the ends justify the means. If it has a better outcome for more people, that's good. I didn't even think of the simplest thing. The reason we're just naturally drawn to that is it has the illusion of numbers. We can assign numbers. And when we get into these very ambiguous, hard to decide moral issues that are nuanced, 4 is bigger than 3. That's very comforting. I think we underestimate how comforted we are by the notion of utilitarianism because you have a bigger number than a smaller number. And even like the trolley one that we all know, you're on a trolley, it's going to hit 3 people. You can pull a lever, it'll hit 1 person. Well, 3's life saved is better than 1. But what if the 3 dudes just gang rape somebody and the life you're going to kill is on the verge of curing cancer? Like, it's so much more complicated than all lives have the same value.
I have built models, right? And like, I know how even when you have awesome data like you have in baseball, right? It's like a game that has structure and rules. I know how much you can have a garbage in, garbage out problem. And like, some, to speak nerdly, some parameters are robust, meaning you can change them and the output's about the same. And some are not, meaning you make an assumption and it totally radically changes and overwhelms everything else in the system. One irony is like, I actually kind of, in some ways, I trust the poker players more and like the traders more and people like that because they actually have skin in the game, right? Mm-hmm. If they are wrong.
And there's there'll be penalized. There's an outcome.
Right.
One of the things he did, Sam, was dump $12 million into this very small election up in Oregon.
Yeah.
It's detailed in the book. And in fact, I had a friend tell me so excitedly, he said, do you know Sam Bankman-Fried, he asked Trump how much money to walk away from the election. Yeah. And the number was X.
Yeah.
And he's like, can you imagine how great that would be? And I was like, I'm sorry, that's not great. To subvert democracy, whether you like the guy or hate the guy, no, buying off, what if someone offered Obama $12 billion in 2008 to walk away? You can't use your money to take away an option for people to vote on. This is fundamentally wrong, but it flies under this banner of effective altruism. You could definitely argue a utilitarian point of view on that, but I'm like, now we get into Kantiism. There has to be a principle called democracy that rises above all that.
So in some ways, the demise of Twitter was mispredicted, right? People thought, the engineers will leave and Twitter will physically collapse the infrastructure, which it hasn't happened. It remains very influential, right? But you could say that like Elon Musk spent $44 billion, was it?
Yeah.
Probably knowing, certainly by the time he bought it and was trying to find ways out, probably knowing that's like not a good ROI from a pure financial
He's going to lose
standpoint.
money on that. Yeah.
But he's willing to spend, let's say half of that, right? Let's say the real value is 20 billion, excuse me. So he's spending $25 billion on like a cultural and political project. And maybe it's paid off, right? He's still the richest man in the world. In fact, his wealth has only increased since Trump's election. So it's kind of pocket change to him. And I think it has had a huge effect on the discourse. On one hand, I don't blame Silicon Valley for saying, hey, we're going to stand up and defend our interest, right? I think they felt that they were getting a hard time from the White House on antitrust stuff, which maybe they should get, right? I'm just saying this is their mindset for a second, right?
Yeah.
On antitrust stuff, and they're tired of their like woke progressive employees, and meanwhile, the news media has become very anti-tech.
And there's like an agrarian movement right now against billionaires. I'm watching the Frontline 2 hour on China right now, and I'm like, guys, we're kind of inching towards like this agrarian hatred.
It's this weird like Barbara Pole thing where like somehow like Donald Trump, right, who is I don't even want to get into Donald Trump's finances, right? But but because he's like a kind of like poor person's idea of like a rich person, he kind of gets like a pass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really true.
And like everyone feels like agreed, right? The left feels aggrieved and the right feels aggrieved. When someone's on a winning streak, and this is also talked about in the book and the stuff about how traders behave and how poker players behave, you're getting so much fucking dopamine, that when you're on a winning streak, especially men, when you're on a winning streak, and you can't, it's like, it's
Can't be talked
literally narcotic, right? And so like you can't really be reasoned with.
Well, I love the that chapter on effective altruism, and it's very interesting to have you sit with Sam Bankman-Fried and have him basically try to woo you while also real time watching his empire crash and getting more and more accepting of the notion that he's probably going to go to jail, and it's all you're there.
Oh,
for
and like
a
his
lot of
mind.
that.
I mean, I interviewed him like 4 or 5 days before he got arrested and taken into custody. So his mind is reeling like it's a video game, trying to figure out how can I somehow get out of this mess. Like he was someone who actually found it kind of hard to generate empathy for, in part because like, even when I like asked him, the last time I talked to him was in Palo Alto, California. He's at his parents' house under house arrest, right? You have to give away all your electronics and like writing on this hotel notepad. And like I hadn't actually written that much. So like I can't make small letters anymore. I don't think. It's like when you land the landing form on the aircraft, like I can't write.
I can't even see these questions.
But I'm like going through this notepad and then you realize he has like an ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is serious, right? And then I asked him, well, what if you could get like 2 years probation? You settle the court case for 2 years probation. And at the time, people kind of knew he was pretty dead to rights, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'd have to think about it. It's like, 20 years instead. By the way, like testified in his trial in New York against, I guess not the advice of his counsel, but against the advice of like other lawyers that I spoke with. He was just going to perjure himself, which is what he did, and really pissed off the judge. So he's actually kind of a very bad, miscalculating type.
So let's just close with Sam Altman. So he is running OpenAI, and he's in the river.
Yeah.
What did he do in the past that, from your assessment, would qualify him as being someone that has got a big appetite for risk?
So he worked for a firm called Young Combinator, which is an incubator. So they would like go through and look at lots of very early stage pitches or founding teams, right? Give them a small amount of seed money. But when you do that, then you get very good at like networking, basically. But you get all the business because like there's a lot of outflow. Everyone who's a young investor who may not be established would want to go to this firm, and therefore he makes great connections, develops a good eye for talent, and his skill set is really kind of like knowing a little bit about a lot and being a good like networker. Like he is not, I don't think, like a coding genius or anything like that.
Oh, he's
right?
not.
Like,
That's funny because I guess I thought I put him in that category of like maybe one of these.
no, he has a good eye for talent and for sniffing out kind of what the next big thing is going to be. Like all of the guys, including the bad and evil people, are impressive. But Sam Altman, because it's kind of this crazy idea that we're just going to like, I'm obviously simplifying this a lot, but just leave this computer on for a really long time. It's like not clear what the commercial applications are, and it's expensive to buy compute. Is expensive, right? It's like not like a Silicon Valley garage somewhere where you're just hacking together a project, right? No clear financial upside, which is why it started out as a nonprofit that's obviously kind of de facto already over. I'm not going to get into the legal structure exactly. But like wrestling together Elon Musk and Microsoft and I think Peter Thiel was an early investor, all these people, and like he was kind of playing the captain of that kind of fantasy baseball team. Sam is an effective politician, right? He understands different constituencies in Silicon Valley, kind of reflects their ideology, and is very risk-on. So Sam Bankman-Fried literally said, again, SBF, not Sam Altman, literally said repeatedly, like, if I could like flip a coin and the coin comes up heads and the world is twice as good plus 1%, and if it's tails, we wipe out all life in the known universe, I would flip that coin from a utilitarian standpoint,
Wow.
right? Sam Altman,
That's a worldview,
yeah.
isn't it? Ooh.
Sam Altman wouldn't do that at 50-50. He might do it at 90-10 though, right?
It's so out of touch. You can be very smart until you hit a certain level of ego and power, and then you become dumb again.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah.
it
and
circles back around.
Your intelligence is compartmentalized, right? So it's like Elon in so many ways is the greatest engineer for centuries. And then he has kind of the emotional capacity of like a 12-year-old. So it's like, that's a big part of your
then
life.
what happens is you get written off or you get adversely like literally once or twice. I mean, SpaceX actually was in very hairy situation for a long time, right?
Yeah, they
Like,
crashed 3. If
Yeah,
if
if he
the
crashed
fourth
the
didn't
fourth, then-
succeed, he's done and he knows it.
And so he's been written off a few times, right? But once you have the chip on your shoulder, and with Sam Altman, partly is that AI feels so miraculous, where you kind of it's taking a long time to let it train on basically reading the entire text of the internet and thinking, scare quotes about it for a really long time, right? And then like, all of a sudden with ChatGPT 2 or GPT-2, and then certainly 3 and beyond that, it's like, this is kind of miraculous. I mean, there was
I
a
just
sense-
started using it and I'm
Yeah.
like, I really can hardly believe this can do this.
Yeah.
You feel like you're interacting with magic in
Yeah,
some
so
way.
you feel you have faith in it, and most of these guys, not that I have the whole faith thing worked out, but I think you start to get into some weird existential and spiritual questions for like various reasons when you're talking about smarter than human intelligence, when you're talking about like life extension and things like that. These guys get into the simulation hypothesis and things like that, right? And most of them are secular. I kind of halfway predict there might be like a little bit of a religious boom in Silicon Valley sometime soon as they try to wrestle with it. But but Sam feels like he's seen this miracle happen, and then he gets written off at different times. Like
they tried to oust him.
the board tried to clumsily oust him from his own company, and then once you survive that, then you definitely
You're bolstered. You're emboldened.
You're emboldened. I think he's the most rational of all the people
okay.
I met. I think he understands his incentives. So I talked to him in like summer 2022, right? The book took 4 years to write. And like at first I was like, and tried to get like another interview later on once GPT 3.5 had come out, right? And they're like friendly, but like, well, Sam was traveling the world for the next 6 months and you first do interviews in person, so it might be difficult.
Yeah.
You come to Cambodia? No, it's like, but at first it's like, oh, wow, this interview's like a year and a half all about him. But it was actually better because he was like less guarded, right? Like back then he's like, yeah, it could go really badly, but we're going to solve global poverty. And wouldn't that be really good, right? We'll solve all technological and scientific problems we'll solve, right?
Yeah.
And that's worth the tangible risk that things go really wrong and we destroy civilization. That's actually I think a relatively honest comment. It may be deranged, but it's like an honest expression of like what he thinks. And like people are like, oh, this is just much be a marketing strategy. It's like, no, I'm like, Tylenol wasn't like, hey, we might poison the water stream if people have more Tylenol, but let's keep, this is like not a typical strategy. And it's because they come from this like mindset where number one, they are taught to like quantify everything in probabilistic terms, which again, I think is more good than bad, but like is not the way most people, apart from me and, other people in the river think about these things, right? And to think in terms of cost-benefit analysis. You layer on top of that, typical startup founder ego, feeling like you're oppressed when you're actually very powerful, right? Having this run of success, having lots of money and people who are sycophantic in your general orbit, right?
Yeah.
And the competitive, we've not talked maybe quite enough about just the fact that like a lot of just plain old competitiveness, right? It's like wanting to compete and win. Capitalism will triumph for better and worse very much, right? Because like the people who want to compete are going to outcompete the people who don't want to compete. So unless you entirely suppress competition, then competition's going to win. It's a very hard problem to balance out.
Nate, this has been awesome. I love your book. One of the things I love that you point out in the book is like, if you take right now the top 10 richest people in America, they're all self-made.
Wow.
If you go back a century,
that
list
wild.
is mostly inherited wealth.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's a good thing.
That's great. I think that's great.
It's only in the top 0.0001%, right? It's because like if you're like born on third base, you don't have just put your money in a trust fund and like go do too much coke. You don't really have much of an incentive to like actually because like what some of these people are doing is like they keep bludgeoning the horse when it's already dead. I'm mixing my metaphors here, right? But they, in some rational sense, when you sell your first startup for $50 million, right? Like just go buy a villa in Tuscany or something and like have a great party with all your friends, right? And then be an angel investor, invest in a basketball team. But instead they kind of keep competing over and over and over again and doubling down over and over again. And so by definition, it's like a poker tournament where the person who like goes all in 10 times in a row and by luck or skill, the combination really, right? That you win these bets 10 times in a row, all of a sudden, wealth multiplies exponentially and you're worth more money than God pretty much, right? Or maybe not literally God, but like than half the countries on earth. I mean, what is Elon's net worth compared to the GDP of like, most countries on earth? A lot of power accumulating in a very small number of people's hands.
Yeah, it self-accelerates. It's flubber.
Before the book, I mean, the print edition, you can kind of bounce your way through. I am partial to the audiobook.
That's what I did. I listened to it.
We cut out some of the things that are like a little bit more
Esoteric or
detours, right? I'm like actually partial to the audiobook version.
Yeah.
But
I like that. That's Malcolm too. Malcolm Gladwell says you should listen to his books.
Yeah, I want to force you to like, constraints are good. I want to kind of force you to like, in the order of the author.
Right. Well, Nate, it's been a pleasure meeting you.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for your birthday.
Cool. It was really fun. And thank you guys both for all.
Well, I look forward to your next book and happy birthday.
Stay tuned for the fact check. It's where the party's at.
I'm trying to taunt you. Have you noticed that my Diet Coke says happy birthday, Dax?
Oh, I didn't
My glass
notice
bottle of
that.
BC.
Is it from Bill?
It's from my birthday, but they didn't come in time for my birthday.
But was it from Bill Gates?
No.
Oh.
I think Kristen ordered them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, cute.
You're right. He has sent us Diet Cokes. It's a natural thought.
Yeah. Is that diet or regs? Diet. This is an amazing
drink.
ding, ding, ding.
Oh.
But for
A different guest.
next, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, earmark it. So how long did it take you to fall asleep?
I don't know because I listened to a few podcasts all the way through.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and then I just let it turn off, and then I don't know how long after that.
What podcast did you listen to?
I listened to Nobody's Listening, right? Elizabeth and Andy, my favorite podcast. And then
That's your blankie.
That's my
Your binky.
My
Auditory binky.
what's lovey? That's my lovey.
Okay, your stuffy, your lovey.
I never had one of those.
A stuffy?
Yeah, and then I wonder.
Yeah, you
I had
did.
stuffed animals,
Okay.
but I never had one that was like you have to take it to the airport and on vacation and all these things that all the kids have.
I had 3, but they didn't travel with me. I maybe brought 1 or 2 of them to my dad's on the weekends.
Yeah.
But I had 3 different bears.
Do you still have any of them?
I wish. My mom is ruthless.
Yeah,
I moved
mine
out and she
too.
just had like a garage sale and just fucking dumped all my stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. But
Can you imagine buying my used teddy bear? She might
ding,
have
ding,
thrown
ding.
those away.
I think this is a ding, ding, ding for real.
it is.
Long time coming.
Oh, right. We had delayed. Liberty. Did you have Liberty cleaned?
Liberty does look a little cleaner than normal. I agree.
Oh, there's the
You'll
shit on the ears.
He's pretty,
Oh,
he's,
fuck.
he's pretty disgusting, but he does
Looks like he
still look
ate
a
a horse's
little.
ass out. Or mules.
He does look a little cleaner than usual. I'm
He's a
for the
mess.
listener. I'm holding Liberty, my beanie baby, who's covered in poo poo.
Yeah, he's a mess.
He's sort of my lovey.
Just because he had value and he was really exclusive. That's not the reason to have a lovey.
He's my investment lovey.
This is my 401k.
What's
I still
on,
remember
what is on him?
fecal matter.
No.
It
I mean,
is.
like from a rat or something?
No, I think you wiped with him.
I did not.
It looks like someone did because the back is spotless. It looks like someone grabbed him from the back and used him, hopefully front to back.
So my parents aren't I guess as ruthless as your mom, but they are pretty bad. Like they just put everything in some big bags.
Hold on, they're not even close. Everything you had as a kid is still in your room.
No, because my brother moved in. So then everything got thrown into these bags.
Okay.
And then thrown in the basement. But it was literally like everything, just like random, like a sticky note they just threw it all in a bag. So this Liberty obviously got thrown face down.
And then old coffee spilled at the bottom of the bag or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he was used to wipe.
But he's still great.
Take a big whiff of his face and see if there's any smell to him. Really get in there.
I know.
Let me be the judge of this. Toss him over.
Be careful, okay?
I will.
I love you.
He's expensive. He used to be expensive.
He is expensive.
Yeah, that's dung.
No, it is. Stop it. Is
No,
it? I don't smell anything.
It doesn't smell. But boy, it does look like.
Listen, I'm not.
Doodles.
You're not going to like what I'm about to say, but it's the truth. This is on eBay right now for $700.
No.
Yes.
Was shit all over it?
Well, no.
Okay, a
I
clean
think these
version in a box or something?
Those ones look clean, but that means they're not as unique as mine.
Well, that's for sure.
This is the only poopy Liberty
That's
there
like
is.
it's like a Warhol. Like you took this cute, valuable thing, wiped with it. Now that's a piece of art.
Do you think I should auction this off?
No, because I would feel terrible for anyone who paid a lot of money for
Maybe
that.
they want it. Why do you get to make the decision for people that...
I don't. You asked me if I thought you should, and I'm giving you an honest answer.
Yeah, because you said you'll feel terrible, but you
protect-
shouldn't feel terrible if they want it.
I want to protect them from themselves.
Do you think people should smoke if they want?
I don't think they should smoke.
If they want.
Yeah, if they want, fine.
Great.
But I don't think they should smoke if they think you'll like them more. Oh my goodness. Get that duty bear out of here.
He's my friend.
As long as you label it as duty bear for the sale of him.
I feel totally ethical auctioning this off, as even though it's a bit dirty. But what I will be honest about, and this is an important piece, it is missing its tag.
The most valuable part,
It's missing the heart thing that has its name. But his name is still on his butt. It says it on the tag
What
there,
it lacks
where
in
he
tags, it makes up for in debris all over his fur.
Anyway,
Anywho.
I don't have any lovies, and well,
What were you waiting to bring it out to tell me that they're worth $700 on eBay?
Yeah, $700. There's a 6-7 one for $674, one for $750. $500. But this is like
You thought at one point
like
it was
$20,000.
worth $20,000.
It was. He comes up in this episode,
Right.
which is why that's a ding, ding, ding. And he's
Shocker that Nate didn't offer to buy it. It's so valuable.
Well, he was upstairs. That's why he didn't see him.
He couldn't see him. Do you think so? Monica's now placed Lashit on her shoulder. Do you think that's your bad shoulder or your good shoulder? Is he telling you to do bad things or good things? So you're it or your super ego?
He's bad.
Yeah.
He's naughty.
He likes to get
He
into
got in the
that.
trash.
He's a little animal. Eating up all those old caramels at the bottom of the trash can.
Yeah, if you go to eBay, you're going to get a nice guy. You're going to get an angel Liberty, but this is the only devil Liberty in the whole world.
That's the only id. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have something I want to announce.
Let's hear it.
I have a few things.
Okay.
First, I don't think I've ever seen a response so consistent in the comments.
Okay.
The dog world is ablaze.
Oh, no.
There's a fervor of recommendations.
I told everyone not to get too excited.
I opened up the comments for James Marsden.
Little Jimmy Marsden.
And nearly every comment said, Dax, please tell Monica she should get a miniature King Salmon Burmese Yorkshire Pinscher. Like they were so specific, the different breeds you need. And everyone has a favorite breed. If you want to hear some testimonials, there are a couple hundred waiting for you.
Okay.
And then another thing I want to say is I read a great book by a friend of the pod's wife, Allison Grant Adams' wife.
Oh, nice.
She wrote a book called I Am the Cage.
Ooh.
And it's really, really good. It's about this young woman who's living in this like tiny little town in Wisconsin by the lake. And she walks to work and she doesn't want to see anyone and she doesn't want to be friendly. And
Is it a novel?
Yes, it's a novel.
Okay.
And there's this huge snowstorm and she gets snowed into this house she's renting. And then just the journey she goes on in this snowed-in thing, and then you're getting all these flashbacks of her childhood, having had this very specific surgery to lengthen a leg.
Ding, ding, ding.
Tell me.
Remember we had a guest on once whose brother had that surgery and he passed away from it.
Yeah.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah, in the book, the character is told by the nurse, like, you're in good hands. He's the best in the country. And then she asks, how many people do this procedure? And he's the only one. The horrificness of this procedure and how much it changed the course of her life and how it all comes into this inflection experience being snowed in. It's really, really
I can't
good.
wait to read
I'm so
it.
impressed. It's so beautifully written. And it's also, I think for people who are like, they're not extroverts. They don't want to talk to anyone. They don't want to comfort anyone. Like I would imagine it'd be liberating to hear someone speak so honestly about how much they dislike all these interactions.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's very brave. It's a very cool book. I Am the Cage. People said in it is...
Is it out?
It's out on February 18th.
Okay, great.
So pre-order it. I really recommend it. It's fantastic. I Am the Cage.
I'll read it.
I don't read many novels.
Yeah.
And it kind of like... I could feel there was enough reality in it.
Yeah. Well, the best novels do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You probably just haven't read any good ones.
I've never read a good
in your
novel. That's
whole
what it
life.
is. Yeah.
I really like reading novels.
Yeah.
I mean,
But you're a
I feel
fantasy girl. You're a cookie
fraudulent.
boy and a fantasy girl.
I am. Both of those things.
Yeah.
I am.
I'm a reality boy. Don't talk about unicorns
You
or
have
Sasquatch.
plenty of fantasies.
Okay.
You're a fantasy girl, too.
And a cookie boy.
And a cookie boy. I'm a reality girl, too.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you in a box.
Yeah. Don't put me in a cage.
Well, I Am the Cage. No, that's the title of the book. I Am the Cage.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Speaking of fantasy, we have an upcoming guest who we discuss fantasy with a bit, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and very similar to your experience.
Uh-huh. It's a great survival mechanism
Yeah, yeah.
until you don't need it anymore to survive
But you still use it.
every now and then.
Yeah, yeah. I took a hike this morning. It's raining.
Yeah, it is.
Thank God. We can only be grateful.
I know. That's right.
We have no choice but to be very grateful.
I agree.
Considering the fire conditions.
I agree. I love
You were
it.
taking it better than normal, which to me seems like proof of that.
Thank you. I'm trying very hard.
Are you? What does that entail? You should look out the window and go, I love you, rain, and just force yourself.
No, to be clear, it is raining. It's been raining for the past couple days.
Mm-hmm.
I have seasonal affective disorder, SAD,
Mm-hmm.
self-diagnosed. And I am about to start my period. There's lots going on
Double whammy.
that generally speaking, I can predict what kind of mood I will be in.
Yeah.
But
And is it helpful to go, yeah, I feel like shit, but I know it's because of these things? Does that
course.
mitigate how much suffering there is?
there's many things at play. I'm starting to feel like really agitated.
Yeah.
It's that,
Right. Not the person.
not the thing or the person or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's helpful to know.
I
But-
do that.
Yeah.
Really helps. I mean, you got to do it with children.
Oh, I bet.
Like if you're depressed, your children, the little things that you can overlook start becoming annoying.
Sure.
And then I have to go, it has nothing to do with them. You just feel this way. It really is effective. I guess that's CBT.
Also, I feel like you've been in a low mood.
Yeah. I had a good 3 weeks of feeling
Down.
depressed.
Yeah. And that is clear to me. Right. And we have talked about it on here.
Yeah.
But the thing you don't always agree with, but that I really do think is true, is that you can only have 100% of an emotion in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Or between two people or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel that. Like when you are not at your happiest.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not my turn. To also be in that headspace. Like it's my turn to be the other type of person in this setting or in this duo. So I don't know. I find that sort of liberating. It's like, okay, this isn't the time for me to indulge my thing.
Because you learn you can control it if you're forced to.
It's not that set in stone. It is, I am able to overcome it.
Yes.
If I need to. And the rain makes me gloomy, but I haven't really been that gloomy.
I'm super lucky because I, in the morning, open up my drapes and I go to meditate. And often I start meditating while it's still dark out. And by the time I'm done, the light has come out.
That's nice.
There's just mist and there's trees.
Yeah.
And it's a luxury. I'm lucky.
Like that.
I can recognize how unbelievably beautiful it is. Like an impressionist painter would be painting that, not the normal day that I see.
Right.
So that's a huge advantage.
That's nice.
So I was looking at it and I was like, I don't know why Gorillas in the Mist is so seared into my mind, but I think maybe that was the first time I saw that kind of tropical, misty foliage.
Yeah.
It really captivated my imagination when I was younger. And so anytime I see like Colombia, when they show the mountainside and it's like very damp and moist, I love it. So I was looking at it, I was like, oh, I can't wait to go hiking in there. There's going to be like the visibility will be low. There was virtually no one out there, which is never the case.
Yeah, the rain will do that.
To the point where I was like, is it shut down again? And I'm now doing it again. But no, I saw a couple other folks.
I wonder if aversion to rain / seasonal affective disorder / sad is like misophonia. Like it's a gene.
Probably.
Because you're talking about the mist.
Yeah.
And I want to,
you
I'm
can
like
intellectually understand.
I understand.
It's like atmosphere in a movie. Like they pump scenes full of dust so that there's a texture to the air.
Yes.
And so it's so cinematic when it's like this. It's just very beautiful. The greens are greener. It's filtering out different kinds of light.
I know, but I
don't care.
I don't like it.
Yeah, you want bright, hot sun.
I really do.
White light.
But I want to like it. Maybe that'll be my New Year's resolution. And this year, the new year started again in February.
Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah.
My mood broke almost on
February.
Feb 1, or day before or something. God, should I tell you something embarrassing? Well, let me first say that whiskey, well, it's related to that. Whiskey has diarrhea in his cage 4 nights in a row.
Uh-oh. He is Noro.
The fact that Kristen hasn't killed herself yet, she's been up every night for the last 4 nights.
Dealing with
his...
Can he wear a diaper?
He should. Well, he went to the vet yesterday, and he, by the way, he's such a bastard. Not even a rascal. He's a bastard.
I know.
They put him in a cone, and all. They couldn't. You can't even approach him. So they had to anesthetize him just to like take his blood and run some tests. So when he came home, he was completely fucked up. Right? He was fucked up. I was jealous. I'm like, what'd they give him that last 14 hours? None of the drugs I ever took lasted that long. He's very small. He's down one leg.
He's almost as small as Liberty.
He is. So he did not have any harness last night, which was great.
Great.
So I woke up in the middle of the night to pee, as I do 2 or 3 times, and I was peeing and I farted, and I was half asleep, and then I went and was about to lay back in bed, and I was like, is there a little...
Oh, you had...
Did something come out?
Oh, wow.
And then I went and sat back. I sat on the toilet and fired up the Brondel, the butt washer.
Yeah.
And I had a little...
duty.
Which never has happened in the middle of the night.
Were you wearing your underwear?
Yeah.
Oh no, did it get in
Well, no,
there?
I was wearing my sleep pants. No panties, just my sleep
okay, but
pants.
you were covered.
But I didn't get anything on anything. It was just a tiny bit of. Yeah.
Do you think-
But I got really close. I guess the point of this story is I got hugely lucky because I didn't notice and I was just about to lay down, and then that would have probably caused an issue where I would have to change my clothes and.
And then Chris would have had to clean up your duty too.
No, she was downstairs on watch for the other duty boy.
Oh wow.
So everyone was
That's-
celebrating this morning that there was no Hannes, and I
Little
didn't have
did
the
they
heart to say
know.
there was something last
There was
night.
just a tiny bit.
I think it's because, well, my hunch is I sold myself on the notion that I might be able to eat this sourdough bread that Kristen's making. Like I really want to be able to have no gluten.
Yeah.
In the first round, which was pretty dense because she used a flour without gluten, then she's like, let's go half and half. And then she made that, and it was so good.
Oh,
and
half and half with gluten.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it was much better.
Of course.
It cooked better. It was fluffier. It was so delicious. And I had a couple slices in the morning.
Okay.
And I think that's why I whiskeyed last night.
You Tonkaed.
And I-
Please
well,
use
no,
please use
Tonka.
the correct.
We know what a Tonka is.
Oh, you don't want to. This doesn't count because
This
it's
isn't
too
Tonka.
tiny.
No, what happened?
I don't want to.
We know
about
Tonka,
it.
what that means. It's not a little oopsie you almost miss. It's like animalistic.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not gonna talk about it, but we had similar situations. Sort of.
Last
sort of.
night?
Yeah. Sort of. Not really, but
Wait, in your
interesting that
your
you
new outfit?
Yeah, but nothing. I didn't have any poop.
But you
I don't
thought
want to
you
talk
did.
about it.
Why? I just was so
I
was so
know, but
vulnerable. I'm so revealing. And
You always are.
Oh, well,
Women can't get away with that
yes,
kind
they
of
can.
thing. No,
Everyone-
they can't. I
yeah.
didn't poop. I didn't.
Are you sure?
But I was sure. But I just had a situation that's a little tangential to yours with
Like
no
you just
poop.
got your outfit down in time?
No,
situation?
there was no poop. There
Okay.
was no poop.
Interesting.
I just had something interesting and novel
Okay.
happened
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
in that space.
Okay. In the bathroom?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Facts. This is for Nate Silver.
Will you eventually write a tell-all when you're like 60 and we'll hear all these stories, I hope?
There's
A
only,
Hollywood tell-all, and it's just all about your Tonka experience.
I've only Tonkaed once.
Right. Okay.
In my
and then
whole
whatever
life.
this other
This
situation
isn't
is.
worth,
Okay.
this would not
Okay.
even make like
Okay. Great.
a chapter.
Okay, great.
It's like at best 2 lines.
Okay.
In
More like a quote I'd put
greater
in my
story.
memoir, like just a quote.
Yeah, it's like under the title, the little like quote. It's nothing.
Okay.
Okay. Speaking of gross things,
Yeah.
salmon, semen, skincare.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is all the rage. And it's because salmon sperm shares a lot of DNA with us.
Okay.
And so we used to have vampire facials. I mean, they still do them, but that's where they would like take your blood out and then,
Spin it?
yeah.
Get the
kinda like-
platelets or something?
yeah, they spin it and zhuzh it and then they put it back in.
Do you think it's stem cell-y?
I think they're kind of trying to make it.
Yeah.
They were, look, allegedly, I never did it and then I am not,
Going to try it.
no, I'm not.
Okay.
But it was a
But
thing.
you do want the salmon ejaculate.
I'm interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Salmon ejaculate is the actual
clinical
correct.
term. Where have you found a place in LA that does salmon
No,
ejaculate?
it's not FDA approved
Oh, I'm so shocked.
yet. It's not FDA approved yet. But if you go to South Korea, you can get it.
Oh, so if you fantasize about taking a trip there?
I do want to go to South Korea.
Just do a week of face stuff?
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to be at the very cutting edge, right?
Yes, there's a podcast I love called Eyewitness Beauty, and Nick Axelrod, one of the hosts, he goes and he once got something called like small face.
Oh, what's that?
I think it made his face small.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they do all kinds of things.
Wow.
Now, it's called Rejurin. It's a long-chain polynucleotide DNA of salmon milt in micro droplets under the skin of the face and neck. One of the main ingredients is hyaluronic acid. Oh, we have a friend who's done this, by the way.
Well, hold on a second. So under the skin, so they're shooting it into you.
Yeah,
it's not a topical.
Right, just like the vampire facial where it's
they put it in.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a friend who did this?
She went to South Korea and she did this.
Did she say that the results were?
She said
Does she look incredible?
I haven't seen her in a while. I might see her at the Super Bowl.
Okay.
But she's said she's gotten a lot of compliments and that she looks visibly different.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Wow.
And it's supposed to improve elasticity, reduction of fine lines and wrinkles, increase skin hydration, and improved healing capabilities of the skin from damage.
How do we know it's not just filler? Maybe it's just working the same as filler if you're putting a needle under the skin and putting volume in there.
No, because scars.
Okay.
It's like helps with like skin clarity.
Okay.
So once it gets FDA approved,
You're going to get it.
I'm not gonna get it.
Oh, you're not?
No.
This is confusing. I thought for sure you were going to get it.
I'm kidding. I'm not kidding that this is a thing and people do find or people like
I
it.
wonder what the price tag is on this procedure.
Yeah, that I don't know. But also
And I would want wild salmon ejaculate, not farm-raised ejaculate.
That's the thing. We got to get the right type.
Wild. I want it wild.
He talked about gay men of his cohort being quite successful. And it's true. And there is a lot of current research on this group right now. Adult gay men tend to have a higher rate of educational attainment compared to straight men, with a significantly larger percentage earning college degrees and advanced degrees like a PhD, MD, or JD. This is often attributed to factors like a strong drive to excel academically in the face of potential societal challenge.
I would say good boy syndrome, which Jedediah told us about.
Yes.
You got to be perfect in all other domains.
Yeah.
And then also, huge incentive to leave your small town to go to a university.
I think that's true.
If I was gay, though, my conclusion would be, see, we're smarter.
That could be part of it.
Yeah, that would be. That would inflate my ego better.
We need to get Charles, bell curve Charles on that one.
I'm sure he's already on it.
Backronym. This is a huge development for us. I've now used the term like 3 times.
Yeah.
It's an acronym deliberately formed from a phrase whose initial letters spell out a particular word or words, either to create a memorable name or as a fanciful explanation of a word's origin. That's very confusing.
I was going to say, you've explained it to me now 4 times, and I don't know what it means, and I couldn't make one. I can't really comprehend what's being said.
I don't understand that definition, but I understood his, which is basically like you work backwards. You have the acronym.
You found an acronym you love.
Yes.
SWATI.
Then you find the letters that go into it.
Right,
I'm sorry, the words that match those letters, as opposed to you create the phrase or the tenets and then you take
now
the
acronym. That makes perfect sense.
I hope I'm right about that.
Yeah.
Fantasy baseball. It dates back to 1980. It was originally known as the rotisserie baseball. Magazine editor Dan Okrent and some friends created the game at a restaurant in Manhattan. Now, the price of Bitcoin today.
Okay, here we go. The Bitcoin Ticker Tape podcast with your host, Monica Padman.
$96,428.22. It's a drop-in.
It's dropping.
Don't come at me.
It's not our fault.
Don't come after me.
Although I would start to think we're jinxing it if I were heavily invested in Bitcoin. I started a new book.
Oh my God, you are reading so much.
I had no interest in Sam Bankman-Fried. But now here he was in Nate's book. And then who's our man who wrote The Big Short? Michael Lewis. I was just perusing titles and Michael Lewis came up. But then I was like, oh, well, I'll read his most recent book. I've liked the other ones. And it's about Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah. So now I'm going to learn more about this guy. It's so weird. I have no interest in learning about him. And now here I am again, and I'm enjoying it. You're
being so prolific with your books. I'm sorry to say I still haven't even finished Intermezzo.
Oh, and we're supposed to do a puzzle on here. You were supposed to give the example from the book. A couple.
Fuck.
Yeah. episode. Luckily, we threw them a bone with the dog. This dog thing, they're off the scent, but a couple people did bring up, hey, are you doing that? Yeah.
Okay, well, we already went too long. So next week we'll do the riddle.
We'll try. Let's see. We're going to try.
We'll do the riddle from Intermezzo. But also I haven't even finished it. And I was supposed to read it at Christmas.
Oh, no.
And now it's February, but really January.
Right.
So it's fine. That's it.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I enjoyed Nate Silver.
Me too. What an interesting guy and an interesting life.
Way outside of what I can comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can find no purchase in this statistical modeling world. I barely
also,
understand it.
I think we have an idea that gambling is like dirty and bad.
Yeah.
And then statistics is smart and
Yes. And the stock market
highfalutin.
also is good.
Exactly. And it's all the same thing.
Yeah. It's all gambling. It's all risk. It's all percentages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right.
Young lives. All right. Love
Bye.
you.
I love you.